I start from a quotation, a wandering thread lightly joining one thing to another. Such is the dream of Bernard, one of the 6 characters in Virginia Woolf's novel, The Waves. Well, at first sight, this wandering thread is redolent of an old British tradition, the tradition of the serpentine line, that William Kent, Hogarth, Burke, Stearns, and many others pit against the square angles of French gardens and French tragedy. But I think there is more about this than a matter of straight or curved lines. The problem is about the kind of thread that can be drawn by words assembled in the form of a fiction. More precisely, it's about the possibility of combining 2 powers of the words. Their power to draw a line between one fact and another fact, and their capacity to tell the truth about them by so doing. The invocation of the wandering thread may thus appear as a search for the formula meeting the requirements of new fiction. As it turns out, the deceptive ability of the too clever Bernard is quite close to the vain capacity of the successful novelists that Virginia Woolf denounces in her essay on modern fiction. Those novelists, she says in the essay, are materialists. They are only concerned with the body and not with the life of the soul. As she puts it, quote, they write of unimportant things. They spend immense skill and immense industry, making the trivial and the transitory appear the true and the enduring, unquote. This is why they fail to capture life. Life is not like this. The reader, they may then ask, yes, okay, but what is it exactly like? And what does the spiritualist method that is true to life consist in? The answer given by Virginia Woolf is well known, but nevertheless a bit intriguing. Life consists of an incessant shower of innumerable atoms that come from all sides. It consists of, quote, a myriad impressions, trivial, fantastic, evanescent, or engraved with the sharpness of the steel, unquote. So the task of new fiction is to record the atoms as they fall upon the mind in the order in which they fall. The materialist novelist, says Woolf, is constrained by some powerful and unscrupulous tyrant to provide a plot, to provide comedy, tragedy, love interest, and an air of probability embalming the whole. Well, in other terms, he makes the evanescent enduring through a strong connection of causes and effects, obeying the constraints of verisimilitude. Life, Woolf says, is not only a succession of sensory events, it is also the whole within which they fall. What she names, after Conrad, the luminous halo, or the semi-transparent envelope surrounding us from the beginning of consciousness to the end. The wandering thread, thus, is something different from the chain succession of the atoms. It is a thread linking the atoms so as to make the light of the halo shine, and the spiritual texture of the envelope provide a new sense of the whole. Modern fiction, so, is predicated on 2 principles: the radical exteriority of the atoms, which means the destruction of the usual modes of connection of causal action, and the living unity of the halo, which means the immanence of the whole, manifested in the very jump from one atom to another atom. What is spiritual is the erasing of the border separating the material from the spiritual. It is the liberation of the sensory events from the scenarios based on that separation, the scenarios of the mind imposing its wills on the material world. The solution consists in giving a 2-fold function to the thread of narration. It must also be a bridge between 2 words. As it links a sentence with another sentence and a narrative event with another one, it must also bridge the gap between the logic of the impersonal connections of life and the logic of action, which is the logic of personalization and of causal relation between individual wills and acts. The logic of succession and the logic of action must slide imperceptibly on each other. The events of the novel must be microsensory events happening to characters that, at the same time, live the normal life of individuals, making plans to achieve their ends, a marriage or a divorce, a degree course at the university, a performance or a party. The success of modern fiction rests on a compromise. It rests on its capacity to construct a form of succession that fits the demands of a plot while making the life of the soul, the life of the impersonal or the infinite, that denies the artificiality of all plots appear. In order to make it appear or resound, one must do two contradictory things. On the one hand, one must dissolve the fragmented temporality of causes and effects, ends and means, thoughts and actions, within the continuity of microsensory events, succeeding one another, just as an hour succeeds another hour. But on the other hand, one has to create differences of intensity within this continuum. The infinite opening of the Katz Ekaston is not enough to produce the difference of intensity through which the truth of life can dissolve the lie of the plot and weave its own totality. So the difference of intensity must come from elsewhere. It must come from a split of truth itself, a split of the crystal of intensity aligned to the process of domestic life promised by the reflections of the clouds in the pools on the beach. In Mrs. Dalloway, the split is enacted by the opposition of two characters, the happy Clarissa and her sad double Septimus. The ontology of modern fiction is monist, but its practice has to be dialectical. A dialectical practice, this means that the book has to be made out of an assemblage of heterogeneous, if not contradictory modes of linkage. Stories of love and death, tyranny and rebellion have to break through the lyrical continuum of the extended prose poem, as it happens with Virginia Woolf, or the book, refusing all theories as anti-literary parasites, has to include and develop its own theory as it happens with Proust. As I recalled it earlier, this dialectic is linked with an affair of sacrifice. The fictional sacrifice of Emma, Albertine, or Septimus, well, among many others, from Jude the Obscure to Joey Christmas, is also a structural condition for settling the relationship between truth and plot. Again, the question of fiction contains two questions interwoven with each other. Fiction designates a certain arrangement of events, but it also designates the relation of a referential word to alternative words. This is not a question of relation between the real and the imaginary. This is a question of a distribution of the capacities of sensory experience, a question about what individuals can live, what they can experience, and how far their feeling, gestures, and behaviors are worth telling to readers of literature. Modern fiction wants to replay in its own way and for its own benefit the struggle between forms of life. It wants to isolate and keep for itself the luminous halo of life and the power of the truth, while dooming its characters to the old lie of the plot. But that distribution of the roles prevents modern fiction from weaving its own thread. Truth has no proper language, no proper mode of fictionalization. Modern fiction, thus, has to make new compromises with the logic of the tyrant, with the logic of the plot. The life of the one, the life of the impersonal, can only be told as a combination of heterogeneous stories. The wandering thread is destined to remain a broken thread. Thank you very much.